Hello, everybody. This is the Declaration of Barbara Colborn. My name is Barbara Colborn. I'm over the age of 18 and I have personally knowledge of matters set forth herein. I'm a resident of Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. I grew up in the area and after leaving in 1976, moved back in 1989 and have lived here since. Well, let me turn my audio up. I'm a resident of Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. I grew up in the area, and after leaving in 1976, I moved back in 1998 and lived there since. I lived in Manitowoc when Stephen Avery was exonerated during a civil lawsuit against the county and for his trial for the murder of Teresa Halbach. Andrew Colborn, Andy, is my ex-husband. We are recently divorced. It became official just this year. We got married in September 1991, and we have a son together, and Andy also has two daughters from a previous marriage. I don't remember much about Avery exoneration and civil suit. I didn't know the Avery family and was not living in Wisconsin at the time of Avery's rape conviction. I recall that sometime after the exoneration, Andy was deposed about a phone call he took while working in a jail, but I do not remember if the deposition was taken in connection with the civil suit or the murder trial. I did not go to the courthouse to watch any of the murder trial because Andy didn't want me to. I also did not watch the trial on television, even though the entire thing was broadcast. Andy would tell me some things about it, for example, how upset Teresa Halbach's mother was, but he didn't want me to hear the details in court, even though I avoided watching the trial. I did see some parts of what were recapped as shown in the nightly local news. I felt bad for Teresa's mother and family. I know Andy testified at Avery's trial, and I know Avery's and his attorneys claimed that Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputies, including Andy, planted evidence to frame him for Teresa Halbach's murder. I never believed that Andy planted evidence to frame Avery. I believe Stephen Avery killed Teresa Halbach. During the trial, so you didn't watch any of the trial testimony, and you're basing that on because Andy said he did it? During the trial, Andy was very stressed and agitated about being accused of planting evidence. He was upset that the defense would come to that conclusion and would be allowed to say such things about him in court. He felt that the system had turned on him by letting the theory be introduced. He even told me at one point that he was afraid he was going to be sent to prison. I thought he was exaggerating. What he was saying didn't make sense to me. Andy just wasn't himself at the time. He was quiet, and he could only focus on the trial. He would pace in the house. He was withdrawn and started drinking a little bit more. We stopped going out because Andy didn't want to go anywhere in public. We used to see our close friends and family often, but we stopped seeing them as much because Andy didn't want to see anyone to go anywhere. He was concerned that people might believe Avery's theory that he planted evidence, and he did feel like he could trust anyone. Didn't always think that Andy's feelings were irrational, but that's how he felt, and I tried to be supportive. Some people that I worked with were really interested in the trial. We would watch it whether they had time off. I remember some people talking about how it was interesting, but overall people tended not to raise the topic with me because they knew I didn't want to talk or hear about the trial. No one at work started treating me differently because of the trial or Avery's accusation that Andy planted evidence. I also didn't notice anyone treating Andy any differently or changing their opinions about him because Avery's accusation at trial that Andy planted evidence. In fact, it seemed like the community was pretty supportive of law enforcement and Andy after the trial. I never watched a documentary Making a Murder, and I do not intend to watch it. The only parts of the documentary that I've seen are certain experts that I happen to see on television or what I heard about it from other people. Because I did not watch Making a Murder, I could not have and did not change my opinion of Andy in any way. Again, I do not believe Andy's planted evidence to frame Avery. Our family received a lot of public scrutiny as a result of Making a Murder, and some of was very vicious. I understand Andy was disclosed in litigation some of the hateful messages received. Most of them came from out of town, out of state, or even out of the country. There was a local group of people who also supported Avery, but none of those people were ever our friends. In fact, our congregation, Grace Evangelical Lutheran, was very supportive of Andy and our family. Several fellow congregants and told Andy they were behind him, and that meant a lot to him. I don't know anyone whose opinion of Andy was changed because of making a murderer. I don't believe the documentary caused Andy to lose any friends. It was Andy who distanced himself from everyone, including his own friends. He became less friendly with people because he was always on his guard. I encouraged Andy to move on from making a murderer, but he told me that some things you just can't let go. Andy couldn't accept anyone thinking that he may have planted evidence to frame Avery. If he felt like someone was less friendly towards him, he interpreted as was believing that framed Avery. Well, it's a very good possibility that Link planted the key, and I'm just saying, they were both there when it happened, and Kaczarski's on the bed. No one treated me differently or poorly because of making a murder, and I didn't lose any friends because of it. I understand that Andy has listed several of my family members as damages witnesses in this case. My family never thought less of Andy, and their opinions of him didn't change because of making a murderer. Even though Andy was always welcomed by my family during our marriage, after making a murder, Andy didn't feel comfortable being around them anymore, so he stopped seeing them as much. To the extent he is less than welcome in their homes today, it's because he had an affair and then divorced me. Andy and I talked about his decision to bring the lawsuit. Andy had a hard time finding a lawyer who would take on his case. He called several lawyers over a period of a couple years before he finally found a lawyer, Michael Griesbach, to take on his case. I think Griesbach was willing to take up the case because he had already written a book about the underlying facts. I just wanted to move on from making a murder, but Andy couldn't let it go. So I did my best to support him in bringing the lawsuit so he could be happy, and felt like life would get better if he could find someone to bring the lawsuit. In addition to the lawsuit, Andy also involved with the rebuttal documentary to Making a Murder. I was present at most of the meetings about the rebuttal documentary with him. A lot of those meetings took place at our house. The person Andy would most often meet with and talk to about the rebuttal documentary was Brenda Schuler. I think Andy had about 10 to 20 meetings with Brenda. I don't know how Andy first got involved with the rebuttal documentary or when, but it started years ago and has lasted a long time. At the meetings, Andy and Brenda would do research on events related to the murder of Teresa Halbach, such as proving the timeline of everything that happened and when. I also understood Andy has claimed in the lawsuit that the documentary caused our divorce. I would say that the stress of being in the public eye and all the attention we got from making a murder did put a strain on our marriage. The hateful phone calls made us extra cautious, like making sure all our doors at home were locked, watching who was driving by the house, and screening our calls. But then there was anything in the documentary I believed. Again, I didn't watch it. To the extent Avery's accusation made it to the documentary, those accusations did not change my opinion of Andy. That's not what caused our divorce. I like how she mentions nowhere yet about this secret safe room that he built in his house to protect him and his family. This lawsuit has also impacted our marriage because of prolonged okay. And his conviction is also making murder like, planted evidence for framing for the murder of Teresa Halbach. We would always have talks about these things, even when I didn't want to talk about it anymore. Because he was always discussing it with lawyers for the lawsuit, it was just going away. The trial and accusations, the documentary, they were all there because of the lawsuit. I wanted to move on. I didn't want to let Avery or the Making a Murder ruin our lives, and he couldn't let it go. Though he wanted to bring the lawsuit to try to fix things, but it wasn't getting fixed. The lawsuit only did more damage to us. Eventually, Andy and I separated and now divorced. When Andy and I first separated more than a year ago, I was hoping we would reconcile. I did not want to divorce him. I thought he would come around, but never did. He told me he was divorcing me because he wasn't happy anymore. I did I do know that Andy had an affair while we were still married. I don't know when it started, and I believe it was someone that he met through his work. Andy continues seeing the person throughout our divorce and understand that they are still together now. Andy's affair is a big cause of our divorce. I also know that Andy's relationships with 3 children were not affected because of the documentary. Their opinions of him were not changed by the documentary, and they didn't love him any less because of it, or because of Avery's accusations that Andy planted evidence. His relationship with the kids is a work in progress today, but that's because of the affair and the divorce. I declare under penalty of perjury, foregoing true, correct, best to my knowledge. Barbara Colborn. Well, y'all got any questions, comments? Feel free. Yeah, the panagram was whether no, he states that he had to build a secure room in his house because he felt threatened for his life. Yeah, I call bullshit. Most of these documents don't really contain any info. It's just court mumbo jumbo filing bullshit, so I don't know. So Link is a good scapegoat for AC, but yeah. Why didn't Link chose to sue anybody too? I find it extremely hilarious that he wanted to sue Buting, Strang, and Ferrick, but nobody would take his lawsuit. And he wanted to sue Zellner too. It's funny that Griesbach finally took his lawsuit, and now Griesbach isn't even part of the case. And if you see that original document, he wanted the ability to get out at any time if he wanted. My question is it because of his deposition that he chose to walk away and Andy signed off on it? Well, I don't know. She claims that it's the lawsuit that broke their divorce up. The fact that he has a grudge against making a murderer. But he is a shady mofo. I mean, he claims that he receives a phone call and patches it through to a detective or his superior, but doesn't file a report about that because they don't make reports about phone calls. But the day after he's released from prison, Andrew Colborn is there filing a report about that exact same phone call, only because he claims Link instructed him to. I don't know. It's a shit show. What's all in that safe? Will we ever find out? They need to do an audit of the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department and Calumet and the DOJ. Well, there's a bunch of documents that were filed, and I don't know. I don't see no point in clicking on some of them because I have to pay for everything, and I don't know. It's a waste of money just to see a bunch of bullshit, but it is what it is. Oh, he definitely lied about Cuss Road. And on the audio we have from Cuss Road, we hear him in the background saying Teresa Hallbach is west of Avery's. Now, that's just a snippet of what he's saying, because we don't know what he said before that or after, because it trails off, but we have evidence ledgers that state that they are in the Yonda Barb Tadich Dassey house, and you can see up until the time, because they're writing the time stamps on every time they take a firearm and put a tag on it. Him and Tyson are dispatched over to Link was with him too. They're dispatched over to Cuss Road. Well, this is hours after everything is taking place. I've done timeline for every day. I don't know. Hopefully Judge Suck will do her fucking job and grant Stephen Avery a new trial and evidentiary hearing. Andy took lots of photos during the investigation, but we have yet to see. He's the one that went and retrieved the AudioVox cell phone and papers that were strung along the road by the turnaround. You just listen to the audio. When he's supposed to be off for the 5th. He gets called in. As soon as he gets to the security point, because he's called in for help with securing the roads. As soon as he gets there, he's instructed to go right to the command post. And then it's put on the search team to go into Avery's trailer. You hear them requesting if anybody has cameras. And he says, "Oh, I got that right in my car." And then he's supposed to have off the 6th. He works again. The only day he didn't work was the 4th, because he had the 4th, 5th, and 6th off. Then he works on the 7th. Cuss Road happens. At the end of the audio we have for Manitowoc, he's telling the dispatcher, "Hey, cross me off for tomorrow, because they're going to need me out here again." And what happens on the 8th? They start finding everything. In the morning of the 7th, you hear in Calumet's audio stating that they're going to be wrapping it up by the end of the day and going home. Their investigation is done. And then Cuss Road happens. And why is Dennis Jacobs' name crossed off the sign-out sheet on Cuss Road? That's why Bushman says, "I see a Manitowoc officer sitting at the end of Cuss Road, but I don't know who's in it." It's because it's Dennis Jacobs. He took more to his grave than just a voicemail. What's that link for? T1. What's the link for? Dude, they were using cell phones the whole damn time. It's pretty sad because big windstorm comes through and knocks out one of their towers, and they have to use 911 for their GPS. And then the guy that's using the GPS system, he doesn't know how to work it. He can't get it to calculate accurately. It's just a fucking shit show. Stacy's song? Who's Casey? I don't know. I don't know, but see y'all next time. I need to get to bed. It's damn near 4:30 in the morning. Oh yeah. Did he say he did anything on the 4th? He says he can't remember what he was doing on the 4th. But is it just me, or does Andrew Colborn seem like the type that would probably wear his uniform on his day off? Just saying.